The laughter died in Studio 6B. Not the polite kind of quiet that happens during commercial breaks, but the profound silence that occurs when something real breaks through the manufactured joy of late-night television. Jimmy Fallon, mid-gesture with his coffee mug, froze completely. His smile didn't fade gradually, it vanished, replaced by something nobody in that studio had ever seen before. Raw recognition. Pure human connection cutting through every layer of performance and protocol. It started as just another Tuesday night taping of The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon. The familiar rhythm of 30 Rock buzzed with its usual energy. Audience members filed into Studio 6B, chattering excitedly about seeing their favorite late-night host in person. The Roots tuned their instruments, sound engineers adjusted levels, and Jimmy worked through his opening monologue with the writing team, polishing jokes about the day's headlines with that infectious enthusiasm that had made him America's favorite nighttime companion. The guest lineup was solid but not spectacular. A romantic comedy star promoting her new film, a chef demonstrating an impossible-looking dessert recipe, and Linda Parker. Linda was the kind of guest that filled the middle segment perfectly, a healthcare worker whose story had caught the attention of producers during the pandemic. She'd spent 25 years as an oncology nurse at Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan, caring for cancer patients with a combination of medical expertise and emotional strength that had earned her recognition from colleagues and patients alike. The booking seemed straightforward. Linda would talk about her experiences during COVID-19, how the pandemic had affected cancer treatment, maybe share some uplifting stories about patient resilience. Feel-good television with just enough substance to remind viewers that real heroes work in hospitals, not Hollywood. Jimmy had read her pre-interview notes and looked forward to a conversation that would provide both inspiration and a brief respite from the usual entertainment industry chatter. But as Linda Parker walked onto the Tonight Show stage that Tuesday evening, something felt different. Maybe it was the way she carried herself, not with the nervous energy most first-time guests exhibited, but with the measured composure of someone who had delivered difficult news too many times to count. Maybe it was how she paused for just a moment too long before settling into the guest chair, her eyes scanning the studio as if she were memorizing every detail. Or maybe it was simply that some stories choose their own moment to be told, regardless of what anyone has planned. Jimmy launched into his usual welcoming banter, his genuine warmth immediately putting Linda at ease. She wore a navy blue blazer that looked like it had been purchased specifically for this appearance, paired with a simple silver necklace that caught the studio lights as she gestured. Her graying hair was styled conservatively, and when she smiled, laugh lines appeared around her eyes, the kind that come from finding joy in places where joy is precious and rare. "So Linda, 25 years as an oncology nurse," Jimmy began, settling back in his chair with that easy confidence that made guests feel like they were chatting with an old friend. "That's incredible. What drew you to that field? Because I have to imagine it takes a special kind of person to do what you do every day." Linda's response started predictably enough. She talked about wanting to help people during their most vulnerable moments, about the privilege of being present during both the darkest and brightest chapters of human experience. Her voice was steady, professional, colored with the kind of careful optimism that medical professionals master, honest about difficulties while maintaining hope. The conversation flowed naturally into pandemic experiences. Linda described the challenges of treating cancer patients while the healthcare system strained under COVID-19 pressures. She spoke about protocol changes, family visitation restrictions, and the additional fears that cancer patients faced during an already frightening time. Jimmy listened intently, asking thoughtful questions, occasionally shaking his head in amazement at the resilience of both patients and healthcare workers. But something shifted when Jimmy asked what seemed like a routine follow-up question. What kept you going during the hardest days? When you were exhausted and overwhelmed, what reminded you why you chose this profession? Linda paused. Not the brief pause of someone collecting their thoughts, but a longer silence that stretched just beyond comfortable television timing. Her hands, which had been gesturing naturally throughout the conversation, stilled in her lap. When she looked up at Jimmy, something had changed in her expression. "You know, Jimmy," she said, her voice quieter now, "I always thought I understood what my patients were going through. I mean, I thought I understood as much as someone could without actually having the disease. I held their hands during chemotherapy. I celebrated their good news and grieved their losses. I watched families say goodbye and witnessed miraculous recoveries. But I realized recently that I never really knew." The studio audience sensed the shift. Conversations in the back rows quieted. Jimmy leaned forward slightly, his performer's instincts telling him that Linda was approaching something significant. "What do you mean?" he asked, gently. Linda's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained steady. "6 months ago, I was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Jimmy's coffee mug stopped halfway to his lips. In the control room, producers exchanged glances, realizing that their feel-good healthcare worker segment was transforming into something entirely different. The camera operators, veterans of thousands of hours of television, kept their shots steady while internally adjusting to capture what was clearly becoming a moment of raw human truth. Jimmy set down his mug carefully, his full attention focused on Linda. "Oh my God," he said, and for the first time in the interview, his voice carried no trace of performance. "Linda, I'm so sorry. How are you doing?" "I'm doing well," Linda replied, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Really well, actually. The treatment is going successfully, and my prognosis is excellent. But Jimmy, I have to tell you something that I haven't really talked about publicly because it changed everything for me." She took a breath, gathering herself. "The hardest part wasn't the surgery or the chemotherapy or even the fear. The hardest part was walking into the oncology ward where I'd worked for 25 years and seeing it from the other side. Seeing my colleagues, people I'd worked alongside for decades, now taking care of me. And realizing that every single thing I thought I understood about what my patients were experiencing, I had barely scratched the surface." Jimmy nodded, his eyes never leaving Linda's face. The studio had become completely quiet. Even the Roots had stopped their usual between-segment instrument adjustments. "But here's what I learned," Linda continued, her voice growing stronger. "I learned that being a patient doesn't diminish who you are as a caregiver. If anything, it makes you better. Because now, when I hold someone's hand during their first chemotherapy session, I know exactly how cold that IV fluid feels going into their arm. When I tell someone that the nausea will pass, I know how long those hours feel when you're waiting for it to happen. When I see fear in someone's eyes, I recognize it because I've seen it in my own mirror." The camera caught Jimmy's expression changing. His usual animated engagement was replaced by something deeper, the look of someone witnessing courage in its purest form. "The most incredible thing happened 3 weeks into my treatment," Linda said. "I was sitting in the chemotherapy chair, the same chairs I'd helped countless patients settle into, and I was scared, really scared. And this woman in the chair next to me leaned over and said, 'You're Linda, aren't you? You took care of my husband 2 years ago when he had lymphoma. You probably don't remember him, Robert Martinez?'" Linda's voice caught slightly. "I did remember Robert. He'd been one of my patients during a particularly difficult case. His treatment had been successful, and he'd been cancer-free for over a year when I last saw him. And there was his wife, Carmen, now receiving her own treatment. And she said to me, 'Robert told me that when he was scared, you always knew exactly what to say. You made him feel brave. And now I want to return the favor.'" Jimmy's hand moved unconsciously to his chest, a gesture of emotional recognition that wasn't performed for the cameras, but simply happened in response to Linda's story. "Carmen and I sat together for 4 hours of chemotherapy that day," Linda continued. "She told me stories about her husband's recovery, about how they'd traveled to places they'd always dreamed of visiting once he was healthy again. She showed me pictures of their grandchildren and talked about her plans for after her treatment ended. And I realized that this woman, this patient, was now taking care of me. The circle had completed itself in the most beautiful way. That's when it happened." Jimmy Fallon, who had hosted The Tonight Show for nearly a decade, who had interviewed thousands of guests and navigated countless unexpected moments, did something unprecedented. He stood up from his desk, walked around to where Linda sat, and without a word, knelt down beside her chair and took her hands in his. The audience didn't gasp or applaud, they simply witnessed. The cameras kept rolling, but everyone in that studio understood that they were no longer watching television. They were watching two human beings connect in a moment of absolute authenticity. "Linda," Jimmy said, his voice thick with emotion, "what you just shared isn't just inspiring, it's sacred." The idea that you spent 25 years caring for others, and then when you needed care yourself, that same love came back to you through someone you had helped heal, that's not just beautiful, that's proof that everything you've done with your life has mattered. Linda squeezed Jimmy's hands, tears flowing freely now. "You know what the strangest thing is?" she said. "I always thought of myself as the strong one, the one who had answers and comfort to give. But being a patient taught me that strength isn't about having all the answers. It's about being brave enough to receive help, to let other people care for you, to admit that you're scared and still show up anyway." Jimmy nodded, still kneeling beside her chair. "Can I tell you something?" he said. "My mom went through breast cancer when I was in college, and I remember thinking that the nurses were like angels. They had this ability to make the scariest place in the world feel a little bit safer. And I know that for 25 years, you've been that angel for so many families. And now you're showing them that angels can be vulnerable too. And that doesn't make them any less angelic. It makes them more human." The connection between them was palpable. Linda looked at Jimmy with an expression of recognition, the look of someone who had spent years caring for others and suddenly found herself being truly seen and understood. "There's something else," Linda said quietly. "Something I wasn't sure I was going to share tonight, but sitting here with you, in front of all these people, it feels important to say." Jimmy remained kneeling, giving her his complete attention. "When I was first diagnosed, I was angry," Linda admitted. "Not at God or the universe or anything cosmic like that. I was angry at the irony. Here I was, someone who had dedicated my entire career to fighting cancer, and now cancer was fighting me. It felt almost personal. Like the disease was saying, 'You think you understand me? Let me show you what I'm really capable of.'" She paused, collecting her thoughts. "But that anger transformed into something else during my treatment. It became determination, not just to beat my own cancer, but to return to my work with a deeper understanding. To be the nurse I always thought I was, but with the wisdom that only comes from having walked the same path as my patients." Jimmy's eyes never left her face. "And have you returned to work?" "3 weeks ago," Linda said, a smile breaking through her tears. "3 weeks ago, I walked back onto that oncology ward. Same unit, same colleagues, some of the same patients I'd been caring for before my diagnosis. And you know what happened? The entire floor erupted in applause. Not just the staff, the patients too. Patients I'd never even met before were clapping and crying and welcoming me back." She laughed through her tears. One patient, a teenage girl named Sarah who's been fighting leukemia, looked at me and said, "Now I know why you always seem to understand. You've been through this too." And I realized that my diagnosis wasn't a detour from my calling, it was part of it. Everything I went through made me better at the job I was meant to do. Jimmy stood slowly, his hand still holding Linda's. "Linda, I need to tell you something, and I need everyone here to hear it." He turned to address the studio audience, his voice carrying the weight of absolute sincerity. What Linda just shared with us isn't just a story about surviving cancer. It's a story about what it means to truly serve others. It's about the kind of courage that shows up not just when you're strong, but especially when you're vulnerable. He looked back at Linda. "You spent 25 years being a source of hope for other people, And when you needed hope yourself, the universe sent it back to you through the very people you had helped. That's not coincidence. That's the physics of love. What you put out into the world comes back to you, often in ways you never expect. The audience began to applaud, but it wasn't the usual television applause. It was slower, more deliberate, filled with recognition and respect. People in the front rows were openly crying. Even the Roots, who had seen countless emotional moments during their time on the show, looked moved. But Jimmy wasn't finished. He walked back to his desk and opened a drawer, pulling out a small wrapped package. "Linda, the producers and I weren't planning this, but listening to your story tonight, I want to give you something." He handed her the package. "This is a silver pendant in the shape of a guardian angel. It belonged to my grandmother, who was also a nurse. She wore it every day during her 40-year career. After she passed away, my mom gave it to me, and I've kept it in my desk drawer here at the show. I never knew why until tonight." Linda unwrapped the package with trembling hands, revealing a delicate silver angel pendant on a thin chain. "Jimmy, I can't accept this," she protested. "This is a family heirloom." "And now it's going to continue protecting someone who protects others," Jimmy replied. "My grandmother always said that guardian angels recognize each other. I think she'd want this to be with someone who understands what it means to watch over people during their darkest hours." Linda held the pendant up to the light, and the studio cameras caught how it seemed to glow under the bright stage lights. "You know what this means to me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Tell me," Jimmy said. "It means that even when we think we're alone in our struggles, we're not. It means that the care we give to others creates an invisible network of support that catches us when we fall. Your grandmother took care of patients for 40 years, and tonight, through this pendant, she's still taking care of people. The love doesn't stop. It just changes form." The studio was completely silent, except for the quiet sounds of people crying. Jimmy walked back to Lyndon and gently fastened the pendant around her neck. "There," he said. "Now you're carrying a little bit of my grandmother's strength with you, just like you've been carrying strength to your patients for 25 years. Linda touched the pendant at her throat. "I promise you, Jimmy, every time I wear this to work, I'll remember this conversation. I'll remember that healing isn't just about medicine, it's about connection. It's about showing up for each other, whether you're the caregiver or the patient, whether you're strong or scared, whether you have all the answers or none of them." Jimmy returned to his chair, but the formal interview structure had long since dissolved. This had become something else entirely, a conversation between two people who understood that some moments transcend entertainment and become something sacred. "Linda, can I ask you one more thing?" Jimmy said. "What would you want people to know about nurses? Not just about your experience, but about what you've seen in your colleagues throughout this journey." Linda considered the question carefully. "I want people to know that nurses don't just administer medication and monitor vital signs. We hold space for people's fears and hopes and dreams. We're present for some of the most significant moments in human life: birth, healing, loss, transition. And we don't take that responsibility lightly." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "But I also want people to know that nurses are human beings. We get scared, we make mistakes, we have bad days, we worry about our own families and health and futures. And that humanity doesn't make us less capable caregivers. It makes us more compassionate ones. And for anyone watching tonight who might be facing their own health challenges," Jimmy prompted gently, "I want them to know that courage isn't the absence of fear," Linda said. "Courage is feeling the fear and showing up anyway. It's asking for help when you need it. It's letting other people care for you. It's finding ways to give back even when you're the one who needs support. And most importantly, it's remembering that your worth as a person isn't defined by your diagnosis or your prognosis. You are valuable simply because you exist." The interview could have ended there, but Jimmy had one final surprise. "Linda, there's someone else here tonight who wanted to meet you." He gestured toward the wings of the stage. "Carmen Martinez, would you please come out here?" A woman in her 60s walked onto the stage, and Linda's hand flew to her mouth in shock. It was Carmen, the woman who had sat beside her during chemotherapy, who had shared her husband's story and offered comfort during Linda's own treatment. "Carmen," Linda exclaimed, standing and embracing her. "What are you doing here?" "Jimmy's people called me," Carmen said, her eyes bright with tears. "They asked if I wanted to be here tonight to support you, and there was no question. You've given so much to so many people, Linda. Tonight, I wanted to be here to remind you that you're not just a caregiver, you're family." The three of them stood together on the Tonight Show stage, Jimmy, Linda, and Carmen, representing something beautiful about human connection. A late-night talk show host, a nurse-turned-patient, and a patient-turned-caregiver, all linked by the invisible threads of compassion and care. As the show wound down and the credits began to roll, Jimmy made one final statement to the camera. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've shared a lot of laughs on this show over the years, and we'll share many more. But tonight, we shared something even more important. We shared the reminder that the best of humanity shows up in the darkest places. In hospitals and treatment centers, in moments of fear and uncertainty, in the hands and hearts of people like Linda Parker, who choose every day to show up for strangers who become family." The camera pulled back for a wide shot as the three of them stood together, Linda's hand touching the angel pendant at her throat, Carmen's arm around her shoulders, and Jimmy's genuine smile reflecting not the practiced charm of a television host, but the authentic joy of someone who had just witnessed something beautiful and true. Later, after the audience had filed out and the studio lights had dimmed, Linda Parker would say that appearing on The Tonight Show had been one of the most meaningful experiences of her life. Not because of the television exposure or the touching gift, but because for 30 minutes she had been able to share the truth about what it means to care for others and to be cared for in return. The episode would air 2 weeks later and become one of the most watched segments in the show's history. But more importantly, it would inspire thousands of viewers to reach out to healthcare workers in their own communities, to donate to cancer research organizations, and to have conversations with their own families about the importance of showing up for each other during difficult times. Linda Parker returned to work at Mount Sinai Hospital wearing her guardian angel pendant every day, carrying with her the reminder that healing happens in the spaces between people, in the connections we make, the care we give, and the love we allow ourselves to receive. And in Studio 6B of 30 Rockefeller Plaza, Jimmy Fallon continued to host The Tonight Show with a deeper appreciation for the moments when entertainment becomes something more profound, a chance to witness and celebrate the extraordinary courage of ordinary people who choose again and again to show up for each other with open hearts and steady hands. 6 months after the episode aired, Linda received a letter that would change her perspective once again. It came from a young nursing student in Ohio named Maria Santos, who had watched the interview during her oncology rotation. Maria wrote that she had been considering leaving nursing school because the emotional weight of caring for cancer patients felt overwhelming. But seeing Linda's story, seeing how vulnerability and strength could coexist, how being a patient had made her a better caregiver, convinced Maria to continue her studies. "You showed me that nurses aren't superhuman," Maria wrote. "We're human beings who choose to show up anyway. That's not weakness, that's the purest form of strength." Linda kept that letter in her locker at work, next to a photo from the Tonight Show episode showing her, Jimmy, and Carmen standing together. It served as a daily reminder that our most difficult experiences often become our greatest gifts to others. The ripple effects continue to spread. Carmen Martinez started a support group for cancer patients and their families, holding meetings in the same hospital where her husband had been treated. Linda began speaking at nursing conferences, sharing her story about the intersection of caregiver and patient. And Jimmy Fallon? He started ending each show with a moment of genuine gratitude. Not scripted, not performed, but real appreciation for the guests who reminded him that behind every story is a human being deserving of dignity, respect, and love.
Sometimes, the most powerful television happens when we stop trying to entertain and start trying to connect. Sometimes, the greatest healing occurs not in medical procedures, but in the simple act of being seen, heard, and valued. And sometimes, a late-night talk show becomes a place where angels reveal themselves, not in flowing robes and golden halos, but in navy blue blazers and steady hands, in the quiet courage of those who choose to care for others even when they need care themselves. The guardian angel pendant still glimmers under the hospital lights each day as Linda makes her rounds, a silver reminder that love never truly dies. It just changes form, passing from one caring heart to another, creating an unbroken chain of compassion that connects us all. In the weeks following the broadcast, hundreds of nurses from across the country reached out to Linda, sharing their own stories of resilience. Many had faced their own health crises while caring for others. Others spoke of moments when former patients had become sources of strength during difficult times. The conversation Linda started that night had opened a door for healthcare workers everywhere to acknowledge their humanity without feeling it diminish their professionalism. The pendant became more than jewelry. It became a symbol of the sacred trust between healer and patient, a reminder that in caring for others, we learn deep truths about ourselves.